Hello, friends. Today we're going to try an experiment. We're going to try an experiment in time travel.
That's good. I love time travel.
Yeah, we're actually going to communicate with our future selves. What the idea is, correct me if I'm explaining this wrong, but there's sometimes, you know how there's movies that you hear about and you always keep hearing about this movie. You know you should see it because it's your friends like it and they recommend it, but you've just, for some reason, you've never seen it, or some classic that you've never seen. Like, I've talked to people who are like, yeah, I've never seen Citizen Kane, and they're like big movie fans, and I'm like, you never saw Citizen Kane? Seriously? And they're like, yeah, it's just too special.
They get kicked out of a movie fan club for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we all have those movies, I guess, where there's like, for some reason or another,
Haven't gotten
you
around
just
to
haven't
it.
seen it, even though it's a movie that you would probably like. Maybe you're saving it,
Or maybe
you're
not like.
waiting for the right moment.
Yeah, you have to
It
be in
could
the
be movie all
mood
your-
for it.
Exactly. Or some of your friends all like that you don't trust their taste, and you're like, I don't know what to see that.
Or maybe it's just a movie that it's not in the genre that you like. Maybe it's some, because some people are like, I'm not really into sports, and they're like, yeah, but if this movie, it's a sports movie, but it's really good.
Don't tell me to see Field of Dreams again.
Field of Dreams.
No.
Yeah, that's always the one.
Always. Rudy. No.
Yeah.
I think I even saw those. I just don't even remember them.
Yeah, but
Not my thing. That's okay.
There's some movies that you unexpectedly like, you
True.
know,
Or maybe not like.
or maybe you hate them.
There are the movies that you just, like you said, you've heard about them forever, and you just go, no, I'm going to watch, the new episode of Big Bang Theory. And
Or sometimes I'm like, why
whatever.
did I not see this? Like, it's something I've never even heard of, but I'll see a movie pop up and I'm like, I didn't see that? Why did I not see that?
Also, lastly, for me, it's like, it's one thing to watch a movie from the 50s or 60s or 40s, because that's kind of like, it's in its time. But like, go back and watch that movie from 1991. I'm like, oh, good Lord. No, thanks. Just something about those is tougher,
Mm-hmm.
So I have this movie that I keep hearing about. I love film noir. Everybody knows that. I love the old stuff. I love old crime dramas. And I really love French films. I love French movies and French crime dramas. They're always so good, But there's one, and every time I look at favorite lists, people that have best lists, like film noir, all these people who know a lot more about it than I do have these lists. And there's a movie that's always on there called Rififi from 1955, I think.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
And it's described as like a heist film noir. People say it's one of the best film noir films, and I'm like, why have I not seen this? It's French. It's film noir.
What does Rififi mean?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
But there's no English translation?
Maybe it's somebody's name or something.
Or maybe it's
know.
heist. French, I don't know.
French for heist.
All the French people are going to comment and say, idiots.
Yeah, you're stupid.
I want to try to say a French word
but
for stupid.
I'm going to watch that one, and then I'm going to, then my future self is going to address us in a few moments and tell us all how much he liked it.
Great.
And you guys are going to do the same thing. You're going to name movies that you have not seen.
We're each going to pick a movie we haven't seen.
And then we're going to cut to the future.
Yeah. In just a few seconds, you guys will be transported into the future with us.
Yeah. Into a time when we have seen these films.
Mm-hmm.
Burkle, I've seen Rififi. Kathy, what movie are you going to watch that you have not seen that you should see?
It's a movie I never really heard of or paid attention to, but it stars Brad Pitt, and I feel like I've pretty much seen every Brad Pitt movie in the universe, so how did I miss this one? It's called The Assassination of Jessie James by the Coward of Robert Ford. And the reason I've heard of it is I like to listen to a lot of Spotify stuff, and sometimes I'll just put on a movie soundtrack, radio to hear. And this Nick Cave soundtrack is gorgeous, like one of the most beautiful soundtracks. And I was like, how come I've not seen a movie with a Nick Cave soundtrack starring Brad Pitt? That just seems like this weird gap. So I'm going to try and watch that. It's directed
it's a Western.
It's a Western, and I don't love Western. It's funny. I never have loved Westerns. They're okay. I love Clint Eastwood and his spaghetti Westerns. But after I played Red Dead Redemption, I have a whole new appreciation and relatability to Westerns now. So now I love them. And the smaller and grittier they are, the more I like them. Yeah. So we'll see. This is directed by Andrew Dominic, who also directed a few episodes of True Detective, or was it?
Okay.
Or was it True Detective?
I
It
think
might
so.
have been the Mindhunter. Actually, now that I think about it, it's one of those Netflix crime things,
Right?
HBO crime. So, but he's still around, still directing. But I'm gonna check this out. It has a beautiful poster, also big sky.
Well, some of my favorite movies are westerns. I wouldn't call myself a big western fan or knowledgeable about it, but I just love those Sergio Leone things.
Yes, they're the best.
And yeah, the Clint Eastwood things. But those weren't even made in America.
No, I know that's what's so funny.
But I love some American westerns. I love those. Those Monty
High
Hellman.
Noon.
There's High Noon. There's some really great
I'm
ones.
reading
of course,
reading a book on Fred Zinnemann, who did High Noon, directed so many classic films. I'm reading a book about him. It's just fascinating. Anyway,
so that's mine.
Ford, classic
great
filmmaking stuff.
I love by the coward Robert Ford. It's a kind of funny title. So anyway, that's mine. I'm going to attempt a western with Brad Pitt. Not such a terrible journey, really.
No. And mine is a real small film that a lot of people haven't heard of. It's called Gone with the Wind.
What? What's that movie again?
Gone with the Wind. It's from the 30s.
Nobody starred it.
Yeah, it's directed by Victor Fleming, who directed Wizard of Oz the same exact year. It's one of the classic films, maybe one of the.
And you lived in Atlanta.
I not only lived in Atlanta, I lived a few blocks from Margaret Mitchell's home, and I also worked along with these two, at Turner.
That's just
for years. And Gone with the Wind was played every day at the theater at the Omni. Like 2 showings a day, and I literally could just go down the elevator, walk over, pay $7, go in and watch the movie. Maybe even with my Turner ID,
I think you got in free with your Turner ID. Yeah.
And
I could watch it all day.
What was so funny about that movie too is it actually has an actual intermission, an actual intermission. It'll like intermission. It comes up so you can take a break because it's 3 hours long.
Right.
It's got a prologue and everything. It's got one of those things where it shows a graphic from the film and it plays music while people come into the theater. And I think the Blu-ray has all that restored. And the
I'm very
the
interested.
Well, it is. I've seen the first 20 minutes of the Gone with the Wind 50 times, and then I just can't get back.
Force through it.
I have to kind of get past. There's a scene where they're all sort of talking to Scarlett O'Hara, and George Reeves is in it briefly. The Superman, the original Superman, and they're all talking and they're trying to court her, and it's just this flowery, over the top language, and I go, I can't watch it because
it gets a lot grittier and some really disturbing stuff when she starts helping out as a nurse, like a volunteer.
I have to see it. It's ridiculous. I'm a movie fan. I'm 1,000 years old. I've never watched Gone with the Wind. Come on.
And it's kind of interesting. You're going to see it without the nostalgic gloss. Like I've seen it my whole life. I've seen it in various times of my life. And, now, especially like to see it through present day lens without any of that background of having seen it before. That'll be very interesting to see how it strikes you.
Yeah, I mean, there's in addition to the controversy about the depiction of the slavery times and this sort of romanticized version of Dixieland and the how wonderful the cotillions and the ballrooms and the big Southern belle dresses and all that kind of stuff that some people pine for or claim to, and they think, oh, those were the wonderful great days of the old South, and it's like, nah, it is a flowery version where. I mean, you see it in the background, but the horrors that existed just under the surface of that life and that culture, they're in the film, but in a sort of flowery way,
1939 way. I mean, let's face it, the movie is 80 years old.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it's
all right.
definitely
So
of its time.
There's our assignments. Let's time travel.
So it's
here we go.
What is it again? We have
Rfifi. Gone with the Wind, and the
Assassination of Jessie James by the coward wrote the longest title in the world.
Blah, 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 blah. It's so those 3 movies are we're gonna now go and watch them, right?
Here we go.
So
stay tuned.
We're gonna go.
Here we are.
Oh my God! Here we are. We survived time travel. It worked.
60 years later.
Yeah, 60 years later. The world has changed. I was just outside and I saw the Statue of Liberty in my yard.
Our clothes
just,
changed.
Rotten. And, yeah. Your clothes changed. I'm still wearing the
Oh
same
yeah, I
shirt.
guess black t-shirt would be the right way to do this. All right,
So now we've seen the movie. We've seen those 3 movies that we were just talking about, and now we're going to who should go first?
well, who went first in the?
I think I
Burke,
went
you
first.
went first, so
Burke.
you go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
We'll
I
talk
saw
about
Rififi, which is this French film noir movie, and I have to say I liked it. I liked it for what it is, but I don't think it's going to go on my favorites list.
Wow,
Interestingly,
okay.
it's to me it just felt a little bit too much like he was trying to make an American style crime film. And I hope that doesn't sound condescending, but it didn't have any real Frenchness to it. You know what I mean? They were out on the streets, and you do see Paris and all that, and the cars, but it just seemed kind of like kind of an American film to me. I don't know. And
But
I
it's
felt
in
like,
French, obviously. It's a French film.
yeah,
It takes place in Paris, but you feel it's not French enough.
it did.
Right?
It didn't have that. It didn't have that vibe. It had kind of a more American. Because there was like gangster guys smoking cigarettes, playing cards, and they're talking about it's exactly like what you would see in an American noir film from the 40s, but this was made in the 50s. It's very much like the Asphalt Jungle in some ways. There's some little character things. I don't want to say that it's copying or whatever, because the irony is that the term film noir is a French term, and the French film critics, the French film fans who wrote film criticism, were actually into certain aspects of American films from that era before Americans were. They were just sort of throwaway B movies in America, but the French people were the ones who said, "Wait a minute, this is art. These movies are there's something heavy going on here." So when they made their own crime dramas and things like that, they're great. But this one, to me, the other ones that I've seen, like we've seen Elevator to the Gallows, which is just great. That one was very French to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this one just seemed kind of American to me. It's a heist film. They plan a robbery. It's one of those classic things. It's a jewel robbery. They're literally robbing a jewelry store, and it's pretty great the way they do it and the way they orchestrate it, and they figure out how to drill the hole and how to catch the dust from the drilling, and there's a sequence in there, the robbery, and they have to be quiet. So there's a whole 30-minute segment in here where they're performing this heist where all the guys have their parts to play, and they have all this equipment and this gear that they use, and it's very meticulous setup and all, and they do it, and it's cool to watch that. And then of course things, it doesn't just end with them saying, "Yes, we did it."
Yeah,
The end.
things go wrong. What is Rififi?
Oh, Rififi, one of the sort of American-ish kind of things in it is there's a scene in a nightclub where there's a beautiful woman singing a song, and she's like the smoky singer.
They always are.
Yeah, yeah, and she's singing this song called Rififi, and the lyrics to the song are, it's a street word that means a tough guy, like a street person, and that's the word we use to describe this kind of a man, Rififi,
That's so French that a tough guy would be called Rififi.
Rififi, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It's like a poodle, you can imagine.
Exactly.
Rififi, come here.
So
But
it's
it
interesting
was-
that you were kind of disappointed with it.
Yeah.
in a sense.
I was a little bit, but the more I think about it, the more I think, if it hadn't been hyped up for me all these
Right.
years,
Right.
I probably would think, it was a pretty cool heist movie. I like it. But I think I was expecting something along the lines of Elevator to the Gallows, or some of the other French films that I really love, or
Right.
Italian, films,
Yeah.
European. In other words, films that weren't made in Los Angeles or New York, those heist kind of films. I just love, Asphalt Jungle and a lot of these other heist films. But I think this was kind of I hate to say it, like a sort of an echo of those films.
Interesting.
That
I'm
wasn't.
glad you saw it though.
Oh yeah. I'll probably
got
watch
to
it again, and I might even reassess it. I might even say, you know what, this is kind of a great film. But I think it was hyped, maybe overhyped.
Right.
which may be the case with a lot of these films that we've never seen. And
Sure. When everybody tells you it's the greatest film noir ever, that's tough.
Yeah,
You've
it's a
seen
hard
so
one.
many, and you love some of them. So it's tough to raise to that bar.
You compare this to something like Sunset Boulevard or something, it's like, nah, there's no comparison.
Right.
It didn't have there was I hate to say this, but there was kind of a lack of sophistication with some of it. There were some aspects to the heist that didn't really make sense. It was almost like
That's a bummer.
They thwart this alarm system in a way that it's like, I don't think that would work. That's not how alarms work. And there's a whole sequence that they do, and I'm like, that's that. They really took a big chance on that working exactly the way it worked. Like, what if this thing had not been exactly the way it was? Their whole entire plan would fail. Nobody would make a plan like that,
Right.
counting on one tiny thing.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen exactly the way it's supposed to, all of them are dead.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, that's interesting. How about you, Cap? Let's move on to
All
your
right.
film.
So I watched The Assassination of Jessie James by the coward Robert Ford. And I don't know if guys know how it ends, but Jesse James is actually killed by the coward Robert Ford.
Oh, good Lord.
I know.
Spoilers,
It's
Kathy.
really weird. So it's a weird movie because the entire time you know how it's going to end.
Well, yeah,
So, but I actually really liked it. It was one of those slow burn, just huge vistas, just gorgeous kind of, environments and, men being men. And I don't even know if there are any women in it, honestly. I mean, they were barely in it. They were wives or something in the background.
Right. Washing clothes.
But this is more about, it almost felt like, so basically, yes, cooking dinner.
With one of those scrubber things that they always have in the Western movies.
Yeah. They don't need women in the story. But I was kind of shocked at the kind of star-studded cast, which I didn't really expect. So this had, it had Brad Pitt. And it had
Casey Affleck.
Casey Affleck. So Casey Affleck, he looks so young. He actually looks like Ben Affleck in this. It's really weird. I never thought they looked alike.
Yeah.
So it also has Jeremy Renner's in it, Sam Rockwell, Paul Schneider, Sam Shepard, Zoe Deschanel. I mean, crazy cast. Like,
wow, yeah.
and they're small parts. These are,
Right.
you could tell. I mean, this is way before Jeremy Renner was anybody. I mean,
Right.
I just recognized him. Just wait, is that Jeremy Renner? And Paul Schneider, I recognize, from the newsroom and stuff like that. But it was sort of about this camaraderie of this group who are literally obsessed with Jesse James. Like, he was basically the rock star, and everybody was just like in his thrall. But the Casey Affleck's character, the coward, he was literally, I don't think this was accidental, that he looked literally in love with him, that he was obsessed stalker. Like, he was basically just like like breathless every time he was around him. Like, you could tell it was a love affair that could never happen. And I think that was part of the dynamic, the frustration of the dynamics. He never felt like he was going to be as good as Brad Pitt, who was very strong, very in charge. He was also super paranoid for a good reason, because there was a big reward on his head, and who could he trust in his circle not to turn him in, because they were all broke. They all needed money, So it had that cool kind of small story inside these huge vistas. I really enjoyed it. I think it has this sort of lull, and then when the shooting happens, there is an assassination of Jesse James, but when it happens, it's really brutal. Like, you feel like he's almost daring people to do something to him. Like, he almost felt untouchable in a way. So he like turns his back, knowing that both of these men, there were two men in the room, including Robert Ford, have a gun, and that they're acting really cagey. And he basically turns his back to them, facing the wall, looking at this photo, and you can kind of see the reflections in this glass over this photo that's framed. And he just kind of stood there like, I dare him to shoot me. And they did. Yeah. So it's like, what? But what was interesting is after that, they have this whole like sequence of events after the shooting, because you think, oh, story over, Jesse James is dead. Well, they go into the whole thing that happened after he was dead, how he was put on display, how he was this big, kind of freak show attraction. They put him on ice. People could come in and get their picture taken. I mean, it's super gross, right?
Oh yeah.
And then they go into what happened to, Robert Ford after that, and how he actually, and I didn't know this, he actually put on stage plays. It was entertainment, like theater, of how he killed Jesse James.
Yeah.
So he
Right.
probably killed him like thousands of times over and
Right.
over again. So he was kind of driven a little crazy by that because he was in love with him, obviously.
Right.
It sort of seems like it. But I think because of the beautiful tone and just that soundtrack, that Nick Cave soundtrack, and Nick Cave is actually also in the film at the end where he's in a bar singing, Jesse James song, which is pretty funny. It was actually a really beautiful kind of low key Western that I think is a really nice change from the big shoot 'em up crazy stuff. I think it was a little distracting. I think, Brad Pitt's a good actor, but it's distracting. He felt too modern almost to be in the film.
Right.
But he was like, again, the rock star. So it kind of suited him.
Yeah.
Everybody else was kind of sweaty in clothes that they didn't change for a year. And he had this always had these beautiful clothes and like
Right.
2 guns everyone could see. And he had he was all tricked out.
He was a folk hero for sure.
Yeah,
There
I mean,
was
he
books
played into it. He loved
Yeah.
it, but he was brutal. Like he was killing people for no reason. Like he would do
Yeah.
robberies and kill people on trains for no reason. I mean, he was a
Right.
nut.
Well, when I was a kid, I remember there was a thing. I mean, it probably still a thing that people used to claim they were related to Jesse James. Like, yeah, I'm related to him. In fact, people in my own family have things that they claim are proof that my family is related to Jesse James, as though that's a good thing. As it's almost like you go to some places and people are saying, "Oh, we're related to royalty," or we're related to. If you go back far enough, we're related to these wonderful people. But where I grew up, it was like, our family's related to Jesse James.
He's bigger than life. Like everybody knows that name. I didn't really realize how much of the story I didn't know. So that was really interesting, and also some interesting casting is they all meet this governor. There's this big party, and the governor's played like James Carville, which is he actually really
that's
suits
funny.
him. Yeah, it was very, very interesting to see
The
him.
right
in it.
accent.
Totally. It was great.
But
I think he was seen as a symbol of like bucking the system,
yes.
getting back at, the poor man, getting back at the rich people, which is funny is those kind of people now are like on the side of the rich people. They would be assassinating the poor guy who was trying to do that.
Yeah, we'll be the rich people shooting.
Well, Jesse James, Billy the Kid Carson,
Yeah.
they're all they're all celebrities back then. In fact, going back to your point about everybody being related to Jesse James, I would see so many Antiques Roadshows. I love that show. Like, this gun was reported to be owned by Kit Carson. Like, I've heard that 100 times. Anything a gun or a hat or any of that stuff. So, but I liked the movie. I saw it a couple of years ago, and I thought it was really good. It had that sense. Slower Western burn.
So you Burke, you didn't see it?
I haven't seen it, but it sounds
Mark,
interesting
you saw it.
now.
Yeah.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a nice change.
It is
good. So I'm glad I saw it finally because now the soundtrack will resonate. But I hear the soundtrack, I was like, oh, there's that soundtrack. All the musical cues took me right out of it. But it's fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
That's
All right. And Mark, now the big one, Gone with the Wind. How'd it go?
Well, I loved it. I mean, I didn't watch all 4 hours at once. It was, I did it 1 hour at a time. It's almost a 4-hour film. So
it's a series.
It's an epic.
It's a series. And there are some points, there's some good points where, this is a good time to, to stop.
There are.
Intermission's about halfway through. So, this is, there's no intermission. It just kind of goes into the second part of it.
Right.
That was a good place for me to start. So instead of talking about the film, I'll just talk about my feelings. Like I break it up into two, the stuff before the Civil War and then, the march, Sherman's march.
That is the
Atlanta.
dividing point.
That's like the first chunk. And that is incredibly beautifully told. I mean, the effects still work. I mean, the fires, it's like, holy cow, that is amazing. I think William Cameron Menzies was involved in that. And it's just beautifully shot. Beautiful. The effects are amazing.
That burning is the Skull Island set from King Kong that they had at Culver Studios. I worked a lot at Culver Studios, and there's some plaques around there that say this is where Gone with the Wind was filmed. And this is where King Kong and Citizen Kane and everything, And one of the things that they did, the Skull Island set on King Kong, to get rid of it, basically, they burned it and filmed it in used it as Atlanta.
Right. Yeah, because you kind of tell because it's these kind of this big scaffolding and it's kind of really high, and I guess that was supposed to be.
They put some facades in front of it, but
right. But it's beautiful. So the first half is very epic. It's like really intense. It's the Yankees versus the South, and it's all that sort of intensity, right? And then the second half turns into much more of a parlor drama, almost like a soap opera. And it's a smaller film. It's about Rhett Butler. It's about Scarlett O'Hara and Melanie and Ashley Wilkes. It's a different film. It's a smaller film, but it's still dramatic. So I was into it the whole way. I think Vivian Leigh is unbelievable in this movie. I don't know how you act that way through it's obviously was a long shoot and a 4-hour film. She's like on edge the whole time.
She's good. She's good in everything.
She really is impressive. I mean, she was great in A Streetcar Named Desire.
Yes.
Well, she's also playing a really strong woman when that wasn't really acceptable. And, especially that time frame that they're shooting it in, like she was sort of this anomaly, but she always wanted to fit in. Like she just wasn't that person though. Right. She was very headstrong. Yeah.
And Clark Gable is just Clark Gable. I mean, it's like you're seeing an iconic performance by an iconic actor. He's just, overtakes the screen. Yeah. It's hard for me that, Scarlett O'Hara's character would be so in love with Ashley Wilkes. He's such a He's a kind of a wimpy kind of a guy, just a smaller, he just like shrinks in front of the camera as opposed to this big Clark Gable. So that was hard to buy. But I liked Olivia de Havilland was great as the nice girl, Melanie, and all the other characters. It's tough to watch some of the
putting up with Scarlett all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but she's just such a saint. Of course, Mammy and Prissy and some of the African American characters. That's really tough to,
a little cringy.
Very troubling.
It's troubling. Yeah. I know it's 1865, the South, so they're going to use words like "quote unquote" darky and things like that. Throughout the film. To hear. But of course, I know that Butterfly McQueen couldn't go to see the opening at the Fox Theater in Atlanta because she was African American and they weren't allowed this whites only theater. So that's the hard, awful part of it. Yeah. That I have to kind of put that aside because the movie is 82 years old. It's a piece of art. I have to look at it like that, but it's hard to avoid all that subtext that's so obvious.
But even that's important, I think, to see. For to know that there is a problem there and that it's not the correct telling of history and that we need to just point it out and it happened a lot. Like they were doing that a lot, trying to make it seem like it was okay and they were treated so well. Slaves had a great time. No, they did not.
And it's that idea that you keep hearing from people. Like if you go watch any YouTube video about an old movie, there's always going to be that moron who posts in there, "Oh, I wish that things would go back to the way they were in the old days when they were more wholesome and people were all Christians and good, heart with big hearts." And it's like no, that you're thinking fantasy land.
Right,
it's like maybe it was nice for white people, but I don't want, if I was not a white person, I would not want to go back in time. You know?
So that's the tough part. But there's other parts in the movie that are really like when their young daughter Bonnie dies.
Oh, that was terrible.
That's like
kind of shocking too. Like,
and I didn't know that. Like, a lot of that stuff I didn't know. I didn't know Melanie was going to die. So all the stuff at the end was like, wow, this is pretty. Of course, I know the ending when Rhett says, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." It has such meaning at that ending of the movie.
It resonates in the film.
Clip, yes. And then her ending on the stairs saying, "Oh, I'll go back to Tara. That's really my place of home. That's my strength. That's where I belong." And she says, "Tomorrow is another day." So I'm watching iconic stuff that I've heard about.
That silhouette of her against the sky, and she's got her fist up there. It's like what great storytelling. Yeah.
And there's the orange sky and the tree and it's like gorgeous. I mean,
and that music.
The music is like, one of the greatest soundtracks in the history of time.
It's gorgeous. And I even just love that whole scene where she makes this incredibly beautiful dress out of curtains.
Yeah.
And she almost pulls it off, but doesn't, they get it. But how hard she was trying not to show that she'd been beaten like that she was, down and out. Like it was it really resonates just as a woman to not show weakness like that and to, to always put on the good face because especially in that kind of society, it was so detrimental especially to women to be just ostracized outside the circles that she really desperately want to be part of.
And one more thing is the opening credits. It's just like I can imagine seeing that on a big screen when these huge letters go. It's like it's thrilling, beautiful.
The music is
just grand. Everything about it is grand.
It's so
the technicolor.
You go, I just think about how much it took to make that film.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, it was like David O. Selznick threw everything into, you know, you see all of it. So
And it paid off for the studio for sure.
yeah. So I was glad I finally saw it.
Yay!
It's one of those movies too. It's one of those things also that has been parodied so much. You know, you can't talk about Gone with the Wind without bringing up Carol Burnett. You know,
right?
They did this. I mean, if you haven't seen it, look it up. It's from a long time ago. But Carol Burnett did a parody of it where she makes the dress out of the curtains, you know, but she's still got the curtain rod through it. It's like really ridiculous. And you know, Harvey really Korman, I think, is Rhett Butler, but it's one of those movies that has been taken down a notch over the years because it's been parodied so much, and because the lines, you know, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, you know, that has been done and done and done, and you know, movies like that, like Casablanca or whatever, you know.
They get so iconic, it almost.
But this one holds its power in the sense it's so grand that not many movies since then have been made with that grandly. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like you see everything on the screen.
And the stuff during the war was so disturbing.
Yes,
the war stuff was just. I mean, in the middle of this big, beautiful film is this terrible, like war, like where she's taking care of prisoners who are wounded. I mean, just horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it does show the horrors when there's that there's one shot, I think, where I haven't seen it in a while, but I think the camera pulls back and you see all these bodies that they're trying to take care of. And it's like the streets are filled with bodies with sheets over them. And you think, those are all 16-year-old kids. There's like kids, little boys.
Yeah. So there we are. Now we saw some really
Confederate
cool movies.
flag.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the only way that flag looks good is either tattered or torn down off the flagpole.
Exactly.
So those are 3 movies. Maybe we'll do this again if our listeners can maybe tell us in the comments if they thought this was interesting or fun.
Yeah.
Or if they can think of movies that maybe we haven't seen. See if they can find something that we haven't seen.
Yes, please give us some ideas. We need some ideas on films we haven't seen. Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that.
If you come up with a film we haven't seen that we watch, we'll mention you on our show.
Yeah.
Because that's the challenge.
We'll send you $1 million.
No, we will not.
Oh,
that's such a lie.
Are we not doing that anymore?
No, we're not doing that.
Okay, we discontinued the $1 million prize.
Yeah, we did.
Back in the late 90s.
You might get some stickers if you trust us.
Okay.
Okay, so there you go. So be sure and like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe. Do you want me to scare everybody with this?
Let's do a new one and not do that.
All right.
And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. That
was fun.
Cinemondo signing off.